Okay. Seems like my screen is also recording as well. Yeah. Are we good? I want to believe we are good. Can somebody unmute and let me know if we are good? Okay, okay. So, I mean, we've done JavaScript for quite the larger part of the semester, right? Then we sort of transitioned into JSX, right? How many of us can remember? We transitioned into JSX, right? Saying that JSX is just a way to write HTML and CSS. It's not anything special, but it was just a way to write HTML and CSS, right? Giving us the ability to do a React.create element. So the whole thing behind concept of JSX is what? Your React.what? Dot create element. And then we moved to components, and we said that you could combine multiple a particular JSX element. Now you could put it in a function and it automatically turns into a component, and the idea of the component is what? The reusability, right? That is what component means, like breaking things into chunks or into reusable pieces makes it easy for us to work with. And then from there we said, oh, with the web there is no way for us to have a functioning web application without user interaction. And how does user interaction happen? Since we've done a little bit of events earlier on in our JavaScript, we understand that, oh, with React as well, there's a certain way by which we would use events. And then from that event, there was something that was reoccurring multiple times in the event. Can anybody remember? There was something that was reoccurring multiple times during the event, and that is use state. The concept of use state was just coming over and over and over. And I said, like, okay, I'm not going to explain the concept of use state yet until we get to Lifecycle, until we get to hooks and state as well. But the major interesting part of this use state is that it is important for us to understand it clearly and carefully as well. So don't just cram it. Don't just cram that, okay, when you put this here, you put this here. No, but you need to understand the little detail behind that the use state. And what is state itself? I've said it several times in this class as well, that a functioning web application is a UI plus state. Can we remember that? I think I've said that before. Can I get a thumbs up if we remember something like that? That a functioning UI is actually what? A functioning UI is what? State plus UI. And what is state in that regard? State is just what? Some form or pieces of data that can power your application. State is just what? Some pieces of data that can power what? Your application. So you can refer to that state as data that powers your application. So when you see the UI, we see the UI as just little pieces, little boxes here and there, right? You see it as buttons, you see it as forms. But state is not like, okay, I am the data. So considering our popular example that we've always used, which is the to-do application. So what will be our state in this regard? What will be our state in that regard? The set of the to-dos, right? The set of the to-dos, because without those to-dos, right, our UI is just useless, right? So the data that powers the application right there is what? The set of what? The to-dos. Does that make sense? Yeah. Is anybody here from Circle? Is this Circle 14 now? Is anybody here from Circle 14? Among the 41 persons on call, is anybody from Circle 14? Nobody. That's interesting. Okay, Adebayo Adedoyin. Okay, I thought we spoke on that day of the presentation, Adebayo, right? I think we did. And I think somebody from your group mailed me. Somebody from your group mailed me and sent me a Slack DM. And I told the person that it is not done that way. You can just cold email me and tell me that you want to have your presentation next week by 6 p.m. That's rude. And that's not, I mean, don't let me say it's rude, but I probably did not appreciate it anyways. I'm not the kind of person who do not appreciate the way people kind of like message me, but I just felt like you guys build on the normal time to present. I said I will give you like another shot to present, and then somebody's just cold emailing me and giving me like a directive that I should show up on Wednesday by 6 p.m. that you want to have your presentation. I mean, that's very interesting. Yeah, it's yeah, I mean, I didn't pick offense, but it's just very funny the way the whole thing just went out. So I wanted to say it out there, like it should not be done that way. I already like gave you guys the arrangement to work with, but just code emailing me and telling me that you want it by this particular time. And I think I don't know whether it's your group leader that build on you guys. I don't know. Maybe it's the one, but again, things should be done in a way that makes sense and in a way that is right. So yeah, but that being said, I didn't pick offense. I understand that things can be different for all of us. So, but I just wanted to put that out there. Thanks. All right. So the example I used last year was like with our to-do application. Now the to-dos, they are the data and they have to be stored in a particular place, and that's where what state sort of like comes in. Now the next point that I want to talk about now, they are the most important part, especially with your React journey. If you want to form a good mental framework for React, the life cycle is very, 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 very important. All right. So yeah, I think the life cycle discussion is under. I don't know why this is always popping up. I said I don't want this popping up thing. They should keep their thing. So the 4 keywords in this new chapter that we want to talk about is what? Mount, trigger, render, commit. Can anybody unmute and say something about these 4 phases? Because I think I talked about them in the last class, and I also told you to read ahead of the class. Can anybody just based on their random reading about it anywhere, maybe in the class note or some or whatnot, just yeah. I don't know whose hands is up, or yeah, the person can unmute and speak. Do we have anybody who wants to speak for the whole class? Wait. Can you come again with this illustration of the first one? I didn't pick that. Yeah. Okay. 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 I mean, that's pretty interesting, though, right? I think I like the kind of illustration, and again, it's just the thought about the illustration. So thank you for there. So for us in the React context now, we can say mount is when you do what? Your create root, right, dot render. Do I have some witness, right? That mounting happens when, because that's the place you sort of like put whatever React has now. That's when you put it into the DOM for it to be visible to your users. Does that make sense? Yeah, we can use thumbs up, right? If that make any sense. So mounting is what? Your React DOM dot what? Render, or your create root dot what? Dot render. And those rendering, there is the strict mode and there is the mode that is not strict. And I've not talked about it. How many of you noticed that too? I have not mentioned anything about strict mode or not. So you can see that even in our rendering now, or even in our mounting, sorry, now, our mounting can also be what? The strict one and the one that is not strict. Am I making sense there? Now, trigger is like you cause an action to happen. Miriam said that is the action. So I probably would maybe say that using your hand to carry the bread, and I mean the major action there would have just been maybe even eating the bread, because that is the real thing there, the real action, the real thing. So for us now, the action is like, or the trigger is like, somebody clicked the button, somebody moved the mouse, somebody did something that is an action. Does that make sense? But the major thing is it has to bring a little bit of user interaction with our application. And render is what? The first time something is visibly seen on a particular page. That is what render is. So what is render again? The render is what? That's your return, the JSX that you are returning, and the first time it appears on the page. That is your what? Your render. And then the last part is what? Commit. Right? That is, there is what? You are stamping something to say, yes, I want you to show this. So if it is a counter, for example, when you increase the counter, you click the button, that increase. When the changing of the text changes from 0 to 1, that is your commit. Does that make sense? And I think we should be familiar with the word commit, right? Because there is commit messages in our Git. Is that correct? Right? There is what? Commit messages in our Git. And what does commit messages in our Git means? Commit messages in your Git means like, hey, I am the one who wrote this code. I wrote it this particular time, and this is my signature. This is my email. This is the what? Every detail about the code that was written. Am I making sense? All right. So let's practically look at what it looks like in form of code. So we have the life cycle, we have batching, we have rendering of list, we have conditional rendering, and then we have what? Conditionally assigning values to variables. So the first one here is I need somebody that is going to help me to read. Can I get somebody with a good internet? Yeah, Joanna. You can unmute and speak. Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. Okay. So you want to read for us real quick? So React component rendering stages have what? The first one, which is what? Mount. Now you can read. Now, there are some nice words that we're just seeing for the very first time there. Can you call out the word you're just seeing for the very first time? Can anybody? Yeah, I'm saying yeah. For you personally, can you see a word that maybe you're just hearing for the very first time, or maybe in my class for the very first time? Is there any word in that sentence that you're just hearing for the very first time? What about virtual DOM? Have you heard virtual DOM before? Okay, do you know what it means? Do you want to help us? Okay. So, anybody knows what virtual DOM means here in the class? Who is able to speak? We know DOM. I think most people should know DOM. Is that correct? Most persons should know DOM. That's not even, it's not even a whether you should know. That one, you must know that one. If you don't want me to send you to semester one. The next part of it is, why are they adding virtual to it? So it means that with React, there is a concept of something called virtual DOM. And it is not the original DOM, but it is React's own kind of DOM. And that is where what reconciliation is done. That is, it's a DOM. It looks like a DOM, but it's not the DOM. It is just an imaginary DOM that React uses to reconcile. So anything React confirms in the virtual DOM is then sent to the DOM. Because whatever is sent to the DOM is what you see as the user. Does that make sense? Again, virtual is like, it is not the real DOM. It is just a copy of the DOM. Okay, it's a copy. And that is what you React to use to what? To reconcile. You can note the word reconcile. So for example, supermarkets now, when somebody does a business in a supermarket and they gather their money together, do they carry the money to the bank and say the bank should count the money for them? They won't do that. What will they do? They will first count the money and confirm that, okay, we made 1,000. So we can call that what? A virtual what? Counting. And when the money goes to the bank, who is going to keep the money for them now? The bank will now do their own official counting. And if there is a problem, we can then do what? Reconciliation. Does that make sense? So the real thing is, you the owner of the supermarket, yeah, you still do your accounting because it is your business. But the person who is still going to store the money for you, which in this case is a bank, must confirm. And that their own counting is a counting that is what's going to be now confirmed. And that is the example of what? React virtual DOM. So there is the virtual DOM, the place where React does its own what? Rendering and confirming that this is what your component is saying. And that whole virtual DOM confirmation happens at your create what? Root level. And what do we mean by that? We mean that React will take your component, create a snapshot. What is a snapshot? It will snap it. It will take the picture of your DOM. And then look at what you now have there and say, okay, because this is what you are returning, there is this div here, there is this component here, this is what I think the HTML should look like. And it then sends the HTML, the whole JavaScript and the CSS, and send it to the original DOM and say, oh, this is what they are referring to now, and this is what they want to see now. And that is what our first what? Rendering is always all about. Does that make sense? So that one is what? The first and the most important piece of what? The life cycle of what? Your React. Now, the next interesting part is, I think we still have something to read or some form of code here to explain the whole process. But I think this code does justice to this, right? The code does good justice to this. Do we agree? And the whole virtual thing is happening on what? On this line here, right? And what? This root dot what? Dot render. Does this make sense? Please, please and please, it is very important. Very, very important. Now, the next part is what? This diagram. And the diagram says what? That is the number one place, right? When we render the component for the very first time, there is no previous snapshot to compare to. So React will create all the necessary DOM nodes from scratch and inject them into the page. Do we agree? So the first point where you call your React dot what? Your root dot render, or you call your React DOM dot render, it snaps it. It converts that thing into what? DOM nodes that your browser can understand, and it sends it to you there. Are we all on the same page with this explanation? I believe. Okay. Now, the next part of our conversation is what? The trigger phase. Can you read for us? Honestly, this is also very don't let me say simple to understand, but I think it's straightforward if you look at it. In the trigger phase, what is the key thing that we are looking for? We are looking for what? Interactivity from our user. And if there is no interactivity, then there will not be anything to trigger. And when there is a interactivity, what is the key thing for us? What we need to look for as engineers is that what you are looking for, what? A state change. You are looking for what? A particular function called set state. Wherever they are saying set something, set count, set message, set something, set I, where that particular thing is being called, that is where the state change is happening. Am I making sense? So it is that set thing that causes what? The trigger. Because that causes the interaction. That interactivity, like somebody clicks the button, it causes state change, and then React is going to say that, oh, somebody has triggered something. So like Miriam said, now somebody wants to now eat bread. Somebody wants to swallow a bite of the bread. A bite of the bread that has butter. Sorry, how many of us do not use butter? It's a bite of the bread that has mayonnaise. For those of us who are who are what? Bread and butter children. But for those of us who are maybe like the other side now, maybe a bread and akara that is squeezed together and you are ready to swallow it. Or maybe bread and akara is not good. For those who knows what akara is now, maybe bean cake, for those who don't know what akara refers to. Or maybe bread and stew. How many of us like bread and stew? You are looking for a very hot stew that has just been cooked, and then the bread is very soft, and then you're trying to carry out some interaction with the bread, right? Using your mouth, right? So that is the point. That action must happen. Somebody must take a bite for that thing to happen. So the same way in our UI, somebody must click a button. You click a button, you click something, you move your mouse on something, you do something that is a kind of interaction. And think about it too. Interaction can be keystrokes. How many of you agree with me? Interaction can be keystrokes because there are events like what? Your key down, your key press, your key hop. So it can be any form of what? Event. Animation start, animation end. They are still part of what? Our events. Am I making sense? So for our trigger phase again now, we are looking for what? Interactivity. And we are looking for what? A state change. Those are the key things that we are trying to observe during our trigger life cycle. So you can see how your mount flows into your trigger. Can we see that relationship now? Somebody takes the bread and put it on a plate and sit down on the couch and they are ready to watch Netflix. Sorry, they are ready to watch a YouTube tutorial. right? If it's not Netflix. So you're ready. You're already mounting. You've mounted that position to devour, right, the food. So that is a nice position, right, to start. So you've mounted. Now your trigger is like, okay, let's mix it up with a good butter. A good, for those of you who use, what's this chocolate thing now that we use now? That is very expensive now. I even forgot it now. Nutella. It's just a waste of somebody's money now. You don't need to keep your money to do something good. Or go and buy one chocolate that is cheap and just do everything together. So whether it's Nutella or whether it's granite spread or whatever you want to use, the idea of you mixing that with your bread and just ready to what? To take a bite. That is when the trigger is happening. Like, I'm going to hit this thing. As I watch this film now and it sweet me now, I need to eat. Right. So that is what your trigger. And again, what do I say you need to see in your code to understand that that's a trigger? We are looking for what? Our set what? Our set count, the set state, anything that has set. Because that is that point that what we are telling React that what the value of a state is going to change. And if the value of a state is going to change, you know that what we are coming down to what you need to render that particular change and you need to commit that change. So you can see how the life cycle flows. Do we understand? All right, so let's look at this piece of code here. Now, this here is a function. Do we agree? It's a function, get current time. And the function is below here, right? It is what? What is this function doing every time? It's just getting whatever the time is, right? And returning it as a function. So it means that every time you call this React.useState, this will calculate our time and put the time inside of this first variable. True or false? It will put the value of the time into this first variable called time. And what will it put inside this set time? Can anybody tell me what will be inside set time? Set time will then be a function that we can use to update the value of time. Does that make sense? Set time will be what? A function to then be using to update the value of time. Does that make sense? So if the time was what? 12:53 now as we speak. In the next time when the time turned to what? 12:54, I need to call my set time on the new time so that my original time can update itself. Does that make sense? So what we are then doing with this is that what? We are using a mechanism in our React called what? Use effect. And what that mechanism does is that mechanism helps us to what? It runs anytime you mount your what? Anytime mounting happens, this particular function is fired. Because this use effect here is a function. I'm going to go deeper on it later on. But the basic explanation that I need you to hold here is that what? Use effect is a kind of what? Effect in your React that fires whatever function that is inside of it. It fires what? Any function that is inside of it as it is what? Mounting. It fires anything inside of it as it is mounting. So two things are always inside your use effect. It fires this particular function and it returns another function. And inside of the first function, what is obvious in the first function? Set interval. What is the work of set interval? Set interval is like run yourself like what? How many times? Run this code how many times now? Every what? 1 second. So it means that when this first word sees this, it will run this set time in 1 second and save it inside this interval and save a particular interval to keep what? To keep track. But you can see that there is a set time here inside of this place. So it means that every 1 seconds, the value of our time is going to be changing. Are you with me? Every 1 seconds, the value of the time variable is going to be changing. And what is it? What is the mechanism by which it is working? I've said it before that if you want to change something, we use our set time to change something. True or false? Do we agree with that? It is the work of our set time to change something. Now, what is getting the time every time for us now? What is the function that is getting our time for us? This function called what? Get what? Current time. What is making it to run every 1 seconds? The set interval. Do you see the relationship there? Set interval makes it to run every 1 seconds. When it runs, get time gets our time for us. And set time tells React variable, a time variable, and say, this is your new time. And what is stored inside of this interval here is what? A timer ID. That is for us to know what our interval is. And what we are doing with this return is what? We are just clearing the interval. Because if you don't clear the interval, it will cause a memory leak in your JavaScript application. So this application that you're looking at here, can anybody guess what is going on now? Every new what? Every 1 seconds, I am re-rendering the time. So the first one, my time was 12:50 something. It goes 1 second. It gives me a new time. And that's why if I highlight it like this, you see that what? The highlighting is not staying there. Why? Because it is changing. It is re-rendering. It is using the mechanism of React inside to re-render what? That time every 1 seconds. Am I making sense? And the truth here is that if I want this to render every 2 seconds, who can tell me what to change? If I want this to render every 2 seconds, what line of code am I going to change? Good, the set interval, but what is that particular thing in that set interval that I'm going to change? Yes, we just change to 1000, then to 2000. So you notice that what? It will skip 41 and it will go to 42. You can see now that what? It is skipping and it is skipping and it is happening every 2 seconds. So if I want to change from 2 seconds to 5 seconds, what happens? Right? We'd go down with our 2 and then we go down to 5. And then we would only go back to what? When it is what? 5802. So this is what now? What is the key thing I'm trying to explain here? Can anybody really, Joanna, can you get the key thing I'm trying to explain here? That when there is a set something, that thing causes what? Our trigger to happen. And React, we now want to change and update itself that I need to go and update my value because somebody has called me to update myself. So that is what the key thing that I'm using this piece of code to explain. That anytime your set time changes, anytime set time change, React will be forced to go and re-render itself. React will be forced to go and look at itself and say, I need to be better. Let me use this as an example. I think anytime you probably fail at something in life, you do introspection. How many of us does something like that? So anytime maybe you fail at something or you didn't do something quite well, you just pause and think about it again. What did I do wrong? What could I have done better? Right? And then there is that introspection. There is that trigger. That thing causes a trigger internally in your own way of operation. And you say, maybe I need to wake up 5 a.m. more. I need to what? To be reading for 3 hours more. I need to read for 2 hours more. I need to watch this YouTube video more. But you're introspecting and you're re-rendering yourself. You're repackaging yourself so that you can function better. And that's what React is doing with the trigger phase. It looks at time and say, oh, somebody has called set time again. So I need to change time. Boom, it goes and changes the time. Somebody has changed time again. It will go again and say somebody has changed the time again and I need to change time. Do you understand? Does the explanation make any sense to you? So, and again, I know you want to force me to explain all these use effects very well. But trust me, don't look at those use effects. They are not your business. What your business is what? The set time and that set interval. You see that use effect, we will come back to it and we'll fight it. Don't look at it. Don't fight it at all. Don't even argue with me. Accept it hook, line, sinker now. That I will come back to explain use effect. But the key detail that I need you to pay attention to here is what? That set time. What is that set time doing for me? That set time is triggering what? A re-render. Is causing a trigger to happen, and that trigger will cause my UI to be updated. Do we understand? Yeah, these are the very difficult part of React to explain, but I hope you can really relate with it as much as possible. All right, I don't know what to say, but let's just keep moving forward. The key detail of this trigger phase again is what? Is that set what? Is the set what? The set time. Is the set what? The set time. And obviously, this is our JSX that is being returned, right? And the interesting thing with this is that, do you notice that there's an input here? But you notice that nothing is changing in that input. Because if this input were being re-rendered, it will be losing this cursor. How many of you agree with me? If the input was being re-rendered, that input will lose focus. But you notice that as cursor is inside of that input, the input does not move away. That cursor does not leave that input. So what is that telling you? That is telling you that React is smart enough to know what it needs to re-render from what it does not need to re-render. Can you catch that magic? React, with the ability of its virtual DOM, is smart enough to know what to re-render and what not to re-render. In this situation, what is React re-rendering? React is only re-rendering what? The content of this H1, and it is not touching what? This input. It is very beautiful, and I hope you can catch it. And that is the reason why they created virtual DOM. Because with DOM will just be updating everything it sees. But with the concept of virtual DOM, React is conditioning the way things are being re-rendered. And it only updates the H1 and it does not touch the input. Kai, that is very sweet. Who is touching that? How many of you are touching that magic there? And there is something I can do to make this re-render. Does anybody know what I can do to make this input re-render? Anybody? Should I place 10,000 on this? Don't let me place money on it. People's brain will be working now if I place money on it now. But I need to keep my money to myself. All right. So if I move this input into this H1, you will notice now that what? There will be a problem for my input. Even though the reason why the input is still not reimagined is because you can see that the input is still not re-rendering. And I will tell you why. Because I'm not plugging this input at all to React. But if I plug this input to React, there will be a problem. So I can put it and say value equals to what? Time. So because now it also needs to re-render the content of what that input now every time. And maybe there is an on-handle now. Maybe there is an event. Do you understand? I need an on change to be inside of that input to also what? Re-render that input. So this should always let you understand that initially, even when I put this value here, it is still not re-rendering. Why is it not re-rendering? Because React is smart. And that is the beauty of React. It is very, very smart. Very, very smart in the way it's handling things. And it's performant. Very performant as well. So it still sees and it does a nice reconciliation and only affect the text content of this particular detail. And that is very smart. But if it were to be your normal DOM, everything will re-render and everything will be thrown away. And that is very expensive. So again, that's a little bit of what we have right there. Let's just do this. Let's do this. If we go down back to the next phase now, what's the next phase? What's the next phase? Render. Can you read the render? Yeah. That changed the path. Only update that path. So do you get it now? That the reason why only that 8.2 was changing was because what? React can now only what is search for the path that changed and only updated that particular path that changed. Chicken, finish. It searched for only the path that changed and it left it. So it did not re-render the old JSX. It only re-rendered the path that changed. And the keyword in this phase is something called what? Reconciliation. How many of us are religious in this class? How many persons are religious though here? Do we have anybody that is a traditional worshiper? Before I enter into, okay, we have some traditional worshippers. Okay, good. Okay, so in my faith called Christianity, there's something called reconciliation. Nobody should pick offense because it is my faith. It is not anybody's faith. It is my own faith. Take with it and use it, whatever you want to do with it. This is my faith. I'm not saying somebody else's faith now. So in my own particular religion that I do, right, there is reconciliation. And what that reconciliation means is like you are comparing what something was before to what it is now. And there must be a clear evidence that there is difference. So maybe the person was a Bado before and the person is now a Gudo. You know that, you know the meaning. So they can be a Bado and now they are now a Gudo, right? Or they can be like a stubborn, and they are now a gentle. But the clear difference is that we can place them beside each other and there must be clear evidence that what? There is difference. Do we understand? You must be able to place it side by side and say what? There is a clear difference. So in the first example that we had with the time, you will understand that what? The time was changing from one value to one value. Does that make sense now? So what is making it to change is because we had to reconcile that before time was what? 3. Now time should be 5. Before time was 4. Time should be 6. Do you understand? There must be that reconciliation, and that is what causes what? A re-render. There must be that reconciliation. That is, let's assume this is a counter application that we are dealing with here. If it is a counter application, our initial value most of the time is always 0. Do we agree? If it's a counter application, then you will understand that if somebody clicked on increase in the time, you will now see that what? The time will change from what? 0 to 1. So if we want to do reconciliation now, before there was count that has the value of what? 0. And now, what is the new value? 1. And React will now say, okay, before I am showing 0 on the UI. Now I need to re-render and update the value to be what? To be what? To be 1. Do you understand that reconciliation? Don't fight it too much. It's not a big deal. But the key thing is there must be clear difference. So there must be clear difference between people who started the class with us and people who are joining us halfway. Am I making sense? And if somebody joined halfway and you allow them to be better than you, that's your own cup of tea. But for me, as an instructor, I wouldn't allow somebody who joined halfway to be better than I am. I don't think that should happen in any way. I probably will say it this way, that God forbid. My forefathers forbid self. So somebody did not join the class in the beginning and they are not missing. Okay, so somebody did not join the class, they missed a whole bunch of class, and you did not miss any class, and you still allow that person to be scoring more than you. You allow that person to be better than you, then there's a problem. So what you want to do is that what you want to be reconciling everything that we are teaching and be making sure that you are a new person, you are better and better, so you also can change from your bado to your gudo, if there's any words like that. You get what I'm saying? So you can always be what people will always say in the comments: we are newbies, we are young engineers, we are fresh, I've not written one line of code before, but now you have seen how many lines of code? 1,000 lines of code. So you can say now that I am now better. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying now. Right? The idea is that what? There must be clear difference from those who are attending class and studying from those who are not attending class. I know you will not like me because I said that, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Right? So if you are the one that you are busy and you are attending class too, I'm also challenging you to now give those that are attending the class, give them the run for their money too, and be better than them. Let everybody be better. That's the way life is. But the key detail is that when you are getting information, when you are studying every day, you see that your knowledge is improving. How many of you notice that some codes are now becoming easier for you to write? Why? Because you are reconciling every day. Before, you don't know what a function is. Now you know what a function is. Before, you don't know what HTML div is. You know, every new day you are reconciling. And the truth with us as human beings is this: if you are not constantly reconciling and becoming better every day, you are not going to get a job. You must constantly be better every day to be ready for the job market. And that is why somebody can look at you and give you a job. So whatever your religion calls it, I'm just using that reconciliation because that reconcile is the key detail that React calls it. So don't see reconcile as Christian thing, I beg you. It is just the difference between two things. And I know that every religion has whatever they call that change of character, right? Do we call it change of character or change of behavior? Yes, somebody usually is a stubborn person and now they are a sweet person. There is always that whatever. And if you call it forming too, now you sabi. Anyone way you call it, that is your own cup of tea. But the key detail is that there must be a change. There must be a change. If you said before you usually kill people, then tomorrow you should not be killing people again. That's what React expects you to do. That is, before you are a bad person and now you are a good person, right? So React is saying that let me see the difference between who you were before and after. Do you understand what that render face means now? Because if there is difference, React will now confirm to the whole world and say, this person is now a good person. So all what React needs is that confirmation to tell the whole world that this person is now a good person. How many good persons do I have in my class today? Right? So if there is a reconciliation, if there is a difference between who you were before and who you were now, React will now confirm and render it and show it in the word, show it in the DOM and say, no, the value of count has changed from 0 to 1. The value of count has changed from 1 to 2. The value of time has changed from 1:14 to 1:15. Can we please move forward? Do you understand? So that is the clear thing that React is doing at the third phase. It will re-render. It will re-show to the DOM. It will update everybody that, my values have changed. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. I hope. I know it's lots of talking, but I hope you understand the whole explanation there. And if you look at what I have on the top here, can you see this, Joanna? Can you see this tiny text on the top where my mouse is moving? Can you try to read it? Or should I read it? Okay, good. So yeah, it's saying that because the state changed, we need to generate what? A new description for the UI. Do you see that now? Because what? The state change, we need to generate what? A new description of the UI. Not for the UI now, we need to generate a new description of the UI. React will invoke our component function again. Did you see that invoke again there now? When I said components are function, can you see where that function is coming now? Can you remember that we said what? Components are function. So what React will do is what? React will recall your component as a function. And it will produce a new set of what? Elements. With this new snapshot in hand, React will reconcile and compare that. Oh, before in my virtual DOM, this is the value I have before. In the new snapshot, this is the value I have now. It will compare it to the previous snapshot. That is what reconciliation is, right? And it will then figure out what needs to happen in order for the DOM to match what? The latest. Do you see that? It will what? Figure out what needs to happen for what? The DOM to match what? The latest what? Snapshot. So it will see that, oh, that thing is h1 with a value of count of 0. But the new snapshot of React element that we are generating is what? h1 of 1. How do I change from 1 to 0? It will now see that, oh, I need to update the text content of that h1 from 0 to 1. Because React is still using your JavaScript to update the DOM. I don't know if you understand the trick. So it is still going to use that text content to change from 0 to 1. But it just needs to know, what do I need to do to make sure that what? My UI is updated to the one that is in the component. I hope you get that. I hope. Can you read the fourth the fourth idea, the fourth version of our lifecycle? So here is what? It will be using APIs like what? Append child, things like text content to really commit and say, this is what my UI must look like. Again, it reads, if any DOM updates are required, React will perform those mutations. It will change the text content of what? A DOM node. Or it can create a new set of HTML, right, nodes. Or it can even delete some nodes, right? And or once the change has been confirmed, React goes idle and wait for the next trigger before the next state update can happen. So you see this commit as what? That is that level. Is that point where you are seeing the original thing that has changed. And that's what the committing is all about. And it is a continuous life cycle. How many of you can see it? Right? Mounting is the only one that is constant. But the trigger, render, and commit is what? Is a continuous operation. Do we have anybody with any question though? Before I forge ahead. Anybody with any question? Or is the explanation clear? Good. Step 1, you mount on React DOM. Step 0, mount. Step 1, you trigger a render, right? Step 2, you re-render. That is, there must be a trigger, right? There must be a state update, right? And step 3, there is what? A commit. Somebody's asking, how fast is this step? How many of you are thinking about it? That how fast is this operation, this lifecycle operation? I think that's the beauty there with React. It is very, very fast. Do you agree with me? That it is what? Very, 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 very fast. Very, very fast. Because it just happens. You just click a button and your 0 changes to 1. You click a button and your 2 changes to 3. And you don't know what's happening behind the scene, right? But it's because of what? The state update that is quickly happening behind the scene. And I think also we have maybe some summary again here, which you can also see here, there. Now, can you read this portion? I think this explains the strict mode. Any screen, don't worry, I'll catch it. So any screen update in a React app happens in 3 steps: the trigger, the render, and the commit. You can use strict mode to find your mistakes in your component caused by impure functions, because React calls each component twice in strict mode. What did you see there? React calls what? Component how many times now? Twice in strict mode. React fires the function of your component in strict mode how many times? Twice. React does not touch the DOM if the rendering result is the same thing. It only just fires the component twice. So sometimes you will see your console.log appear twice. How many of you have observed that in your application? Most especially when you create a new Vite application, you will see your console.log happen twice. So the key secret there is what? Your strict mode. And the reason why React does that is to clearly confirm that there is no mistake in your application. So strict mode is very, very good for us. All right, and there is something called batching. How many of you can really relate with what batching? What does batching means? Batching. Batch. When you say you batch something. Batch. Batch 1, batch 2, right? Kara2 2024, Tinyuka 2025. What is batch? Why do we break it into batches? Because we cannot accommodate like 1 million people at a time. So what do? You break them into batch and we repeat the same process over and over. Does that make sense? So the same thing with React. You can group multiple state updates together so that those updates will happen in a what? In a single render. Because we've said it before that one state update causes trigger. Joanna, I need your help here. We have said it before that one state update causes a trigger. Do you agree with that? That we said that before. Now, if you now have what? 3 state updates. What do you think they will be doing? So this one we want to cause re-render. This one we want to cause re-render. This one we want to cause re-render. Is that correct? So it means that this one can render and then it will cause UI to re-render and it will come back to see this thing again and it will see this one at the top. So it means that at the end of the day, it will not kill this operation together to happen at the same time. Am I making sense to you? So there needs to have, so if I click this button here now, right, let's put the cursor here and click this button, what is showing up? What do you think in your head that should show up? What are you thinking in your head to show up? 3. Right, but because this operation is not batched, because this one, as this one is happening, it will not wait for the next one to happen. It will go and trigger re-render. So for us as engineer now, if you want it to happen together, you can use, there are many ways to do it. There is start transition. I didn't talk about it here, but there's something called start or transition. You can use it to batch things together. But also our state update, your state updating function can take an arrow function. Can you see this short arrow function? So instead of just plussing the value to it, if you pass it a function, then it will queue, it will wait and listen to this one and listen to this one and let everything happen at the same time. Is that not beautiful? So if you press your 3 here, you can see that what the whole operation, they were batched together, right? And it was until it has run through those 3 functions before our re-rendering happens here. If you are not excited, you don't understand. Don't worry, you don't understand how beautiful this is. To really achieve things like this in your to really achieve things like this in your normal JavaScript, you go sweat like this, right? Because if you do like a text content, instantly the thing will just show. It will not wait for another thing to happen. But as part of the beauty of what you have like with your React, it's just beautiful that it sort of just can wait and it will just batch everything together and it will only happen at once. Just imagine like you are trying to send money to somebody and it sends the money like this one now like this, and instead you click the button. How many of you have seen website like that before, that as you are clicking and it's sending money, it's doing a operation, you're clicking a submit and it's submitting, or maybe you mistakenly click the button twice. How many of you have seen any operation like that? You did a mistake and you click one button twice and it does the operation twice for you. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but a button should not fire twice, especially if it's a submit button. Make you not go transfer money to transfer money like twice. Account balance has gone down. So you want to read, and that's why when you click the button once, any smart engineer, they will disable the button. Don't go and cause kasala. Don't cause trouble. So as you submit that money to transfer the money from your account to your friend's account, once you disable the button and say you can't click this thing again, no. Now until I get confirmation from the DB and the backend that the transaction is done, that's when I will display a toast and say transaction submitted successfully, and I will clear the form. Do you understand what I'm saying? So an example is with your current assignment when you're creating a card. If you create a new post and after submitting the post, the modal still come back with the same data, and the data is still in the modal after it has submitted the first one, and somebody still click it again, another data is still recreated, then there's a problem with your application, right? Because the submit is only supposed to happen once. It's a singleton. What a singleton means in programming or programming design pattern means that it only must just do one thing. It only should submit that form and it should not do any other thing anymore. When it's submitting 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, there's trouble. There's fire on the mountain. So that operation in our React, we call it what? Batching. And how do we achieve that operation in React here? With our state of data function, you use an arrow function instead of just adding plus directly. Does that make sense? Please keep that. It is very, very important. Very, very important. Now, you can also do your batching, especially when you have your promises, you have async operations and your timeout, right? So before React 19, batching did not automatically happen in a sync context. That is, when you have your set timeout, when you have your promises, right? It does not happen automatically. But starting from React version 18 and the new ones now 19, there is what? Automatic what? Batching for asynchronous functions and other asynchronous operations, which minimize the need to re-render. Now let's look at this function. I'm sorry that there is no formatting here. I need to fix this particular thing that I did here. So how many operations are you seeing here? How many operations are you seeing here? You see like what? Like 4 operations. So this one is going to change the pending. This is going to delay. This is going to also what? Decrease the pending. And this is going to set completed. Now if I click on this by 1, you can see now that what? Because there is no batching in this operation, it is not correct. Anytime pending change to 1, it is whatever is pending is what should go to completed, and your pending is supposed to reduce. I don't know if you understand what this aim of this example is supposed to do. So if you look at this here, when you buy 1, whatever is in pending 1 goes to completed, and pending goes to 0. And when you buy one more time again, pending goes to 1, your completed must go to 2. You see that order? The keeping of that order of execution must, when you buy one more time again, pending must be 1, and then it goes to 3, 0, and your completed must go to 3. The order of the execution must be kept, right? But in this context here, you can see that what? If you keep using this approach here, right, there will be problem, there will be bugs all over our application. Can you see that? So the key thing again is, don't forget your state updater function can accept what? An arrow function, to make sure that it is properly batching. So what happens is what? When I click my pending to be 0, there is a delay of 3 seconds. Then it decreases the pending and it increases the completed. Very beautiful. Very, very beautiful. Do we understand? All right. Again, all these examples are there. I'm not doing any magic. Just copy this and run it on your hand. It will work. It will give you the same experience there, the same experience. And there is what? Bypassing batching. There might be situations where we need to bypass what? Batching with something called what? FlushSync. How many of you have heard of FlushSync before? How many of you have heard of FlushSync before? Yeah. FlushSync is inside of your React what? React DOM. And it has the ability to like, the way it is like, should I use this example? My daughter will say this example is murky. It's a dirty example. Right. So what this example means is that there are people here, they would always go to the toilet and they will not flush. How many of you are here? You go to the toilet and you cannot just press the flush button. What kind of human being are you? I'm supposed to go and start deliverance and prayer. Right. So what the FlushSync is like, okay, don't worry, we know you are lazy, you don't like to flush, so it will automatically just flush for you when you are done. And that's why they created all these modern WC. I don't know if you have seen the modern ones, right? Maybe when you go to places that has those facilities, after you finish doing whatever you are doing and it senses that you are away from that particular place using the sensor, then it automatically helps you to flush. Right, so that is what we're saying with React. That okay, you don't want it to batch, but you want it to immediately trigger the thing, cause an update to happen. You want to force an update to happen. You want to force the UI to quickly accept a particular update. Then you can use what? Your FlushSync. So you can see that what? I am now wrapping the update of my state in what? A FlushSync. So this will be applied what? Immediately. And you're also forcing another one to quickly be applied. Does that make sense? FlushSync, right? It accepts the arrow function of your state updater. Now, there's a warning here, right? It's saying that what? Use your FlushSync where sparingly, so that you avoid what? Your re-render immediately. So, because it has some performance issue and all that, so please use it where you only need it. Use it only where you only would need it. Now, the next thing we want to talk about is rendering a list. Rendering a list. Rendering a list. I know I missed a page. I know you missed a page. We even missed more than a page. So before now, anytime you want to do a list in your HTML, this is the way to do lists in our HTML, true or false, right? You just write your thing and the thing work. Now, when we get to React now, somebody will be telling you something .map to do something. Is that correct? How many of you find it so weird that before to render multiple things, I have to do something in a .map or a .filter or a whatnot? Right. Yeah, very weird. But the truth is, like, with React, you need either a map, a filter, or something that returns what? A callback. Can somebody tell me why the for each will not work? Can somebody tell me why for each will not work? Why for each does not work? Because for each does not return. Does not return back the array back to us. But the reason why the .map and the .filter and the other ones work is because they will return back to you and what? The result of an array. So what your React is expecting is just give me an array of something and I return it into what? Into a list for you. Do you understand that explanation? That with React, the key detail of rendering something in a list is what? Arrays. And that's why the next thing that we have in the code is what? We now have what? Our information in an array of what? What's the name of the variable? People. Can you see this now? So we are now saving all our data inside what? Array of what? People. And each person is an object that contains what? Name and what? Their job. And then when React wants to now play with this, right? React will now tell you that what? Oh, I am what? This is the list. Let's say this is a list of people here, right? And this is the UL. It will now open this curly bracket. I said this curly bracket takes us into what? JavaScript land. True or false? The curly braces takes us into the JavaScript land, and it will then do a people.map. And it will see that what? Okay, give me each person. What is the value of each person? Each person is this object. And it will now say what? I can have person.name, and person.job. And this is the way React will render the list out for us. So this list is now what? A component on its own. And this is what we are talking about. And another way is what? You can also filter something out. You can see here that what? I am filtering out what? What am I removing? I'm removing anybody that is what? Not what? Market specialist out of the picture. Right? So it will only give us what? People. It will only give us people that are not market specialists, sorry. Right? It will only give us these three here. And then you can still see again filtered people.map, and you are able to to render this here. So this rendering will happen how many times now? It will happen based on the length of what? The array. It will happen based on the length of the array. And in this situation, the length of the array should be 3 in this situation. Right? So this should show us what? Inside our UL, we should have how many LIs? We should have what? 3 LIs. Right there. And in the previous example, how many LIs do we have in the previous example? How many LIs are we going to have here? We're going to have what? Our 4 LIs here. So again, something.map, right? So for those of you who did not, you missed the class of what? Arrays. This place now, you will cry. You will cry your eyes out because you have failed to do the right thing and you thought it was well, but you didn't know that it was not well all those period. And you now see yourself now. You now say they did not teach me well now, but you no go no say now you cause problem. You don't miss foundation. And if foundation is faulty now, what should we do now? We're gonna look for a bricklayer to dismantle the whole house and build the whole house again. All right. So basically, this is an idea of how to render lists. I know there should be questions here, but who is bold enough to ask me questions as regarding this rendering of the list? Who is bold enough to ask me a question? Why? Okay, Hamashala. Why do we need keys? Abi? Why do we need kokoro? Okay, I think my next slide actually answers the question. Now, the key detail is like, why do we need key? And where do we find key? The key simple explanation of why we need key is that the key is like a memory for React to know that list has been rendered. So what the key is doing to React is that the key is letting React to be aware that I have rendered this particular thing. And that is the reason why the choice of my key here is very dangerous. Because people can have the same name. I mean, well, it is not always easy to have people that have the same name, but at least you would have seen people that bear your name. I mean, I've not seen someone that is bearing my name though, like my full name, Oluwasetemiojo. I've not seen, but I've seen Shetemiojo. They have their own modifications and whatnot. But to see people that bear your, especially people who have common names, right? You would see people that bear your name. And so if we are basing our key on something that is not unique, that is problem. Because React expects your key to be what? Unique. and to uniquely identify what each of the list. And the reason why React needs that understanding is that so that when you remove one member of the list, React will know how to reconcile. You don't forget that what we are basing our explanation on this section on is that what lifecycle, that reconciliation. So you will notice, if some of you have observed, if you have done any list before, let's say a to-do list, and there is no proper key, and you go and remove one, when React re-render, everything will be jacked together. Has anybody seen that error before? If you are not using a right key or a correct key, if you go and delete one member of a list, when React re-renders, there will be space. It will not know how to handle the situation, and React's memory will just jack everything up, and it will not return it properly the way it is. So the essence of the key is to give React a memory to understand the arrangement by which it rendered it initially, so that when you pluck one of them out, it will fill in the space properly. Does that make sense? Mashallah, does that make sense for you? Okay, so that is the essence of what the key. It helps React. And where do you find keys now? Because now make sure you use what? A serial ID. Like maybe you have your index in your maps, or a ID. If your data has ID from the database, make sure you use that. Or else use a what? A unique key generator like what? Crypto.random UUID. How many of us have seen this before? Crypto.random UUID in your JavaScript. Ha! My student. Hey! So if you do node, then we can do crypto, right? There's the crypto class, good. And then you can do a crypto.what? Random UUID, and then you call it as a function, and it gives us something to use here. So it gives you unique what? Random unique value every now and then. Does this make sense? So if you use this in your local host, it will not work in your local host, because it will only work with HTTPS. Anything crypto in the browser only work with HTTPS. And why is that? Because of security concerns. Am I communicating? So your crypto.random UUID might not work in your what? In your HTTP, in your local host HTTP when you are working, right? Doesn't mean it will not work, right? It only means that by the time you host it, it will work properly, because it needs a secure context. Or you use an npm package called what? UUID. Okay. Although generating key values locally can be tricky as they change on every render, they are best for what? Local items, right there. So rules of keys now. The key must be unique among siblings. However, it is okay to use the same key for JSX node in different arrays. The key must not change, or that defeats their purpose. Do not generate them while rendering. So don't go and do math.random to generate. Don't go and generate a math.random plus ABC plus D plus E plus F. That will be problem. Okay, just make sure that the value is predefined before the rendering happens. Does that make sense? And then the next thing I want to quickly talk about is what? Conditional rendering. And under conditional rendering, we have what? Your if else, your ternary, and your hand operator. Sometimes we want to trigger a state update and based on a certain condition in our application. For example, you want to show a modal when somebody clicks a button. That is a conditional rendering, right? That is, it's only if they click this button that what? That what modal should show. Do we understand the meaning of conditional rendering? So in React, if we can render our JSX based on what? Certain conditions, including your if else statement. How many of you like this first one? This one is straightforward. No wala. If you pass in login, it will show welcome back. And if there is no logged in pass, what will it show? Please sign in. Very straightforward. And then if you go to the next option, right? This is another one. What's the update here now? Else is removed. Do you notice that? Because by default, right, if this option does not more, it will just go to this line. So you can always write, I think this is the right way to always write your if statement, most especially if it's a two situation scenario. This is the smart way to write it, right? If it's just a two situation scenario. Now the next one is what? If you don't have anything to render, you can put null, right? Null is the best, right? Null is the best. Don't put empty string. Null is the best. So if you are using ternary operator, this is common as well. How many of you have seen this before? Ternary. This is very common, and most engineer likes this. Most engineer like this. I don't know why. But I'm not sure. I won't tell you which one I am. Don't worry, right? So if there is this particular prop, right, we render welcome back, or what? You render what? This. And I think the reason why this is a little bit simple is that the multiple lines of code, right? So, but this is just one line, and this will allow React, when it is deciding to render, to just decide what is going to come out here, rather than it going through these 4 lines before it renders something. So that's just, a little performance, example here, right? And this is another, example here as well, right? If it's locked in, hello something here, and what? Hello something there. And then the second one here is what? When you are using the hand what? The hand operator. And I think that I'm always a version of this though, because this looks a little bit much more ternary has a way that they look very difficult, especially when you have a complex situation. Ternary is quite difficult. If you have been writing code for quite a while, you will understand that ternary can be, especially the formatting of ternary. I mean, if you have had situations with formatting of ternary and the thing is just jargons everywhere, right? But if it's just one situation, and okay, so if this condition is true, just give me this P. And if this condition is not true, nothing should happen, right? So this looks a little bit, cleaner in terms of like the way in readability and writability and all that. So, but this is this looks like dope for like, if you write this now, they'll think like you're a senior developer somewhere, right? So that's the example there. Then conditionally assigning values to a variable. Conditionally assigning values to a variable. By looking at this function, I think you should be able to relate with what this subtopic talks about. By just looking at this function, you should be able to relate with what that thing is. That based on our prop, you are setting message, because we are declaring message. So whatever this value of status is, you are declaring what message should be. And at the end of the day, it is the value of message that we are returning. So if status is what? Success, then you show this P. If status is error, right, you show this what? Failed to load data. And if there is nothing, you show this unknown status, and then you return. But the key thing is what? This component is what? Conditionally assigning a variable, right? That is based on a particular prop you send to it. This message will be populated, and then it will be rendered as such. All these are difficult to do without your JSX, especially without React. Can somebody maybe talk about how you do conditional rendering in your normal inner.html? It doesn't come easy to do that in your inner HTML or your text content. They're not easy to achieve, right? But with React and JSX, right, because of the life cycle, because it will first see it can then mount, and it can do a trigger, right, and then it can re-render and it can commit, right? That is the beauty of where React shines. So what makes React really shine is that life cycle, the ability of its virtual DOM. And so the major problem with React, did I say problem? No, don't let me spare you the problem. I will tell you the problem later. But the good part that you should always hold right now is that ability of its life cycle, and is the virtual DOM capacity, right? The virtual DOM capacity. And again, let me even shock you, that's its biggest problem as well. So I didn't want to tell you before too, but this same behavior is its biggest problem. Because when many of you now, you're now writing code like village people, and everything is dancing palongo on the screen, and it's re-rendering itself, and then you will know that there's problem, because a particular state update is calling you to re-render every now and then. Boom, 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 and everywhere is scattered. And then you need to go and look for what is causing that re-rendering to happen 1,001 million times. I think this will happen when maybe you are using use effect. For those of you who have probably tried use effect before, you will just see that thing will just scatter the whole page. Especially if you are making API calls with use effect, it will just scatter and it will fill everywhere with the result of your API call. And you are wondering, is it village people or am I the one that is writing the wrong code, right? Because React's biggest strength, right, that virtual DOM capacity is still one of its biggest weaknesses as well, right? When people really don't know how to write code, right? When people are just learning how to write code. But I think that we've done justice to this particular chapter. Do you agree? Right, we've been able to talk about the life cycle. We've been able to talk about rendering of lists. We've been able to talk about conditionally rendering and conditionally assigning values into a variable. Yeah. And obviously there are more stuff to talk about, and there are more examples as well to show us. So if you look at this place as well here, based on this particular prop here, we are determining like, okay, do this or do this here, right? And then you're rendering this. So React is kind of very beautiful in its capacity or capability, right? So you can also do another example with this, right? So if notification, if you have this prop as message, you pass this particular HTML and then you pass this to your render here. So if we look at our to-do application that we are using, how many of us still remember the to-do applications that we are using? So if you check that to-do application, it has example of everything I've talked about in today's class. How many of you have tried that? If you remember that to-do application that I built and I shared the link earlier, it has every of these things that we've talked about. Rendering of list, rendering of conditionally rendering something. It has everything inside. So I think AltSchool, that's the name of the folder. Are you for real that this is the size of my... Alright, so here, CD into front end, and we are finishing class soon as well. So I think the name of the app should be Sample React from Vanilla. And I want us to quickly pick out the scenarios together real quick. Pick out the scenarios real quick. Why is it taking forever? Why is it taking forever? Okay, good. This is our vit config. We don't have business with you. Let's see our main.jsx, right? This is our main.jsx. So here, if you look at this application, right? Look at this application here. This form here here you have what? On this form now, we have this value here, we have this unchange here. So what is happening with this unchange? As I'm typing something into this input, this unchange is setting the value. This is an example of which part now? Under the life cycle. So if you type E, it will put E inside text. If you type A, it will put inside text. So you can see that here, this unchange is running every now and then. So if I run this application now, we'll see the example, right? You see the example of this thing. Now, this .map here, this to-do.map is an example of which part of what we talked about today? The list. So it means that this to-do must be an array, and then we are doing a .map, right? And it's giving us what? A singular to-do, giving us a singular to-do, and then we can render the to-do. Can you pick an example of conditional rendering here? Can we see example of conditional rendering? Right, that is, if editing ID is equals to the to-do ID, then it means like what? We want to update, right? So change our normal input from ordinary to-do, right, li, change it to what? An input, right? So, and if we're not editing, right, just make sure it is what? A span and the delete button for our to-do. So at the end of the day, right, you can see that what all these things are just what? They are important for you. It's like they are very, very much important for you to know them, right? They're very important. And if I run this application as well, let's say we run this application you run dev here. Do you know that you can force Vid to open your default browser for you, right? By passing -open. Do you know that? Right? You can force Vid to open by default by passing -open, and then you can change your port as well. How many of us know that you are able to change your port? Right? Localhost. I think the default is 5143. 5143. Is it 5143? 5173. Okay, my bad. What did I do now? Is it because they want to beat money today? That's why my hand is shaking. All right. Don't worry, I'm already ready for anything that happens. Yes, don't worry, you don't need to tell me. So I've already accepted. Thank you. So here we have what? We have dancing. So if you do dancing and you press enter here, right? So we can see somebody sent a PR for this. This you're currently one task. This. Who is the name of the person again? Shout out to you. Thank you so much for working on that PR for us. And everybody that's contributed to PR so far too. Everybody, thank you so much. A lot of persons have contributed PRs and I've not been able to check. So thank you so much. So if you look at this now, so you can conclude that this here is what? Our list of to-dos. This is the span and this is the delete button. Is that correct? And if I double tap, right, it is replacing that span and the what? The delete button with what? A input. Right? So that we can what? We can type what? The updated. So, and that is what? And here again, you can see the extra, stuff that we had. So you can see here, if we check mark this now, look at this now. You currently have 3 to do tasks and you have completed what? 1. That is 33% of your to do. And this style does make sense. Thank you so much for this particular style. And look at this all now. We can clear to do. Yes, this is beautiful. I think local storage should have everything back if I refresh. Oh, no local storage. Oh my god. Where is my local storage? Okay, so we need to, so maybe they are clearing too from the local storage, but you can see the basic idea of what we have here as well, right? I didn't want to push too many information to you, right? I kept the original information of this here so that what we can use for our learning, right? We took this into components. Do you remember? We took all these, right? All these JSX into what? Into this form. Right, and that this form is now what? A component inside a what? A folder, right? So if you look at what form, it has what? These are props, true or false. To do length, set to do's, create to do, they are props, right? But this is the original HTML here that we're using, right here. And example, if I comment this out now, let's say I comment this out, and we go and check our what? Our UI. If we check our UI, my system is barely surviving. It's barely surviving. Did I say you should reload everything? Baba has gone to reload. Okay, inspect. So if you look at what is going to happen as I'm typing into this input. So if I check our console tab, we check the console tab, you will observe something that is happening in the console tab, right? That as we type, if I type Q, W, E, no, I'm not typing in the right place. Sorry, I'm just typing in the console. So if I type here Q, W, E, so what is happening? Can anybody guess what is happening? It is re-rendering the input and it is logging whatever we have. It is joining the new one with the old one, and that's what is happening. And what is helping me to do that? What is helping me to do that? My what? The set what? The set what? Set text. And that is the beautiful that is happening there. So whatever I'm typing at every point in time, it is just joining it together with what we have existing before, right? And here to see this conditional rendering here, can you see this conditional rendering, right? If the button length is what? Is greater than 0, that's when we should show what? This particular component. I like this. So React is just beautiful, and it helps us to declare our UI. That is the beauty. Like, it is like declarative. It is expressive. It is like English. If to do length is this, do this. Right here. I think some people are already hungry that have not finished this class. All right. Don't worry. Miriam, you have a question before I quickly wrap up so that people will not swear for me in today's class. Oh, okay. So, anybody has any question based on what I've taught today, though? Do we have anybody with any question? I don't know, but this is the best I'm able to present this to you, and I hope you've learned something today. And I think the next part is the most interesting part too. Everything is interesting to me, don't worry. Everything. React hooks. React hooks is the next part that we're kind of going to, and hooks will lead us to also talk about what's it called now? State. Right, you will be able to like understand, okay, what does what state looks like. But again, let me ask you, to be honest, do you think having this note is helpful? Do you think so? Having this note ahead of time, is it helpful in any way? And is it helping you to all right? So please once I would export the videos and send the URL out so that people can watch before coming to class on Friday. All right, so I'll see you on Friday. Thanks for joining. If you have any question or any concern or complaint, right, you can wait behind to ask any question.